home audio entertainment.
9016 Radio.
The show for artists of all kinds.
Sit down and relax. Enjoy the music.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice. Your turn.
Good. You sound alright. You can hear yourself okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Everything's coming out
you
clear.
You know how this stuff works anyway. Just the fun of it. Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for coming here.
No problem.
This is cool.
I'm more than happy. I've been always wanting to, I always like listening every now and again, like especially like the past ones like Hamish, Silas, Wax, like
awesome.
they're all
that's
good.
a big one. Yeah, no, that's cool. It's cool. And I thought you'd obviously, because you were in radio, you're going to be a great personality to have on here. So I thought that was perfect. So I wanted to get right into that. So how did you end up getting on the radio? Like, is it that easy and need to sort of get a part of that crew there, or?
Pretty much. Like, it's really straightforward. Like, I was lucky enough that in first year, I met someone at a house party. Because, like, I always wanted to do this, like, since high school. It's like, all you have to do is fill out a volunteer sheet and stuff. And it was just always that, like, first knack of kind of getting over that first stage of, oh, is my taste good enough? Is this good enough? Or, like, do I have the voice for radio and stuff? I still don't really think that at points. Like, and that's everyone in general, like listening back to your own audio. You hate.
It's tricky, right?
Yeah. And so I was lucky enough to meet someone in first year who was like, I just started talking to him and it's like, oh yeah, I collect records and stuff. And it's like, oh, do you want to come on? And I got a show on Radio 1. Do you want to come on and play some records? I'm like, sweet.
Sick.
And so it's like, this is when I'm in a hall and stuff, like people like were listening and it's like, shout out to the hall and stuff, which I don't really care for anymore. But like the people there were cool.
Yeah.
And then coming a year later, he was like, oh, hey, I'm looking for a co-host and stuff. And I'm like, I'm happy to help. I want to do this. This seems cool. And then just slowly started getting into it, signing through the volunteer stuff, listening, like going through all those steps. And then just got a show. He left because he had a clash with his lectures and timetable. And I was like, well, I'll find another show. You can keep this one. I got that show, started talking to like the manager and stuff. And then just kept on moving forward really with it. Now being 3 years into Drive, like it was literally for me just, we need someone for Drive. And it's like, I've got this time free. Like it probably works out better for me with like my classes and stuff. I'll jump on. Okay. And like half the time I still don't know what to say. Like I'm just there playing the tunes I want and stuff.
For sure. So it was kind of like in a way you hadn't been picked from any list, or you hadn't really had an experience like in an interview. No, sort of.
Not really. Like I think the closest I've done was like doing media in high school and like trying to do different things here and there. Especially like from doing like the film not papers. So you're saying papers now, but like doing the media classes, like, oh, make a movie or do this, do that. And like, I was interested in documentaries and stuff, trying to do that. So I'd interview people for that and like just try and find different things that like overlap or what I was doing at the time.
Sure.
And so I had experience interviewing to a degree, but extremely amateurish.
For sure.
Like nothing really too.
And when you're put into a live thing as well, that also adds a whole lot of pressure. Like, did you find that was quite freaky the first time, like your first solo show, for example?
Oh, yeah. Like,
oh God.
Because even now, it still kind of daunts me at points. Like I said, I don't know really what I want to talk about half the time. Most of the time, I'm just ad-libbing, rambling. I'll just go off on a tangent, and it's like, that was dumb. Why did I think of these things? And I'm like, I'll go on to something else. I'm like, and now we're going to this track. Boom. And it's like, you're listening to Radio 1. Move on. But yeah, it's still like, it was daunting the first time around because you're sitting there, all these buttons in front of you. You don't know what half them do. All you really are told, like, oh, right, you get trained from it. And even then, still, like, the first time around, it's like, you probably don't want to touch this yet, because this is, A, an expensive piece of equipment, B, you're not ready yet, and stuff like that. And even now, so to this day, because it's the main piece of equipment that we use for interviews for over the phone, which is one of the old school telethon things. So it's like you have a bunch of buttons that have olds and stuff on them. And like even now, still this day, I still don't fully understand how it works.
Well, there's so much to those mixers and things. Like, how can anyone seriously expect to use all of it? And I guess in a radio show like that, where you have to be reasonably consistent, you probably don't want to do too much. You kind of just want to like stop your audio, play the track. Yeah, that's really all you need to do.
I've tried to get a bit more complex with it, with like how to go through different tracks and like, oh, I want to do something where it's using a record, going to digital, going to the main unit, and then maybe going to a CD. But it's
Sure.
like having to be aware of all the different timings can get extremely confusing because it's always about, the one thing I learned is always about counting downwards. So it's always like, how many seconds do you have left on this song?
Right.
It's like, yeah, you could play like a 5-minute track and that gives you plenty of time. Sometimes you might be able to just sit back, relax, go on your phone for a bit while like, and just listen to music and vibe. Other times it's like, all right, what do I need to play next? Because especially for me, planning out a show, I don't do it but like during the show, I try and plan out how I'm trying to get to the next song and make it consistent. Because like each person has their own different takes on how to do it. I always try and go, all right, if I'm playing hip hop, I want to get to rock. What is like the gradual step?
Sure.
Like I could go, all right, if I'm going from something like Wu-Tang Clan to then I'll go maybe Q-Tip, then I'll go to R&B and then pop music, pop dance.
Yeah.
Or sometimes I might go the opposite direction and go way more industrial, like Death Grips, Shoo, then heavy metal or like hardcore punk, and then move down to like alternative.
So that's so cool. So you pretty much like, how long is one of your shows?
Now it's
Typically.
3 hours.
That's a decent amount of time.
Yeah.
So you've pretty much planned out everything you're going to play for those 3 hours before you go. So you're still winging it.
I'm still winging it, but it's a matter of like, all right, like I said, it's trying to create that pathway and problem solve and figure out. Like sometimes I might have to play the same track again because I love the tracks I love.
Yeah.
And I try to always, if I play like a Death of the Maiden song, most of the time it's going to be like River Underground or Ooh Baby the chorus because those songs are just fantastic. But then you might want to play something else and it's like you forget that, 2 weeks ago I played this track, and it's like you just always keep on going back to them because I love them so much.
Sure.
But like there's so many other great ones like Deer or playing some Bad Sav or something like that in replace. And so it is quite a navigational, like it's pretty much, I'm trying to create a map, like just try and sketch that line.
And do you think you have like a reasonable selection of songs that you sort of continually come to, or are you pretty much picking new songs every time? Like I'm just comparing what you're doing there to say like a pop station radio like ZM or The Edge or something. They pretty much have the same songs playing on repeat all the time.
Yeah, well, for them being top 40, they always have to like, well, I don't actually know how The Edge really works. I've volunteered for The Edge in high school. I didn't do great at it. I was horrible at it. Really, to be honest, I never cared about The Edge. Like, I was just there. It's like, this seems fun. It'd be cool to like dip my toes in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so did that for a bit and like kind of learned about it, but did it real half-assed and skin of the teeth, last moment things, like didn't really communicate with them. Don't care. It was fun while it lasted, but especially with them, I assume since they are top 40, they always have to play what is recent. Sometimes they might get paid to play a track.
Yeah.
Because like that's what a lot of record labels do. They push these things. They send press releases. They sell these songs pretty much and try to get more play, try to get them higher up on the charts. That is their business. With us, we have a lot more freedom. We didn't actually have it when I first started. We had a different system where we had a lot more of a code where it's like, all right, you have to play 2 of the A's, 2 of the B's, a C / your own. So that'd be like, okay, these are the new release ones. These are the later release ones. Like maybe they didn't have as big a release as maybe a Marlon Williams album.
Sure.
And so now it's like just free range. Go play what you want in a way, but mainly play off the playlist. And even then, I've got a huge library and catalog to pick from. But I definitely do go back to a lot of the same songs.
Yeah, for sure. And naturally, right? Because I presume you know much more music than I know. For a fact, you know much more music than I do. You've already mentioned plenty of artists. I have no idea who they are. So I would imagine, when you have such a big plateau of things to choose from, it makes it a bit easier, because I feel like I would end up just sort of in the same. I just know from listening to what I listen to on Spotify, it's just the same shit of it all the time, same playlist. So it's nice to be able to diversify and do that,
Like I listen to the same playlist, but the thing is, I've almost turned it into this weird catalog as well. Like I remember when I was in high school, I clocked out Spotify at one point. No one knew. I didn't even know you could do that. I thought it was like, because I'd been using Spotify since like the beginning of high school. Like I was like one of the first ones that had like premium and stuff. Still have it to this day.
Yeah.
Now it's just like through my family, like we split up between 4 people. So I don't have to worry about paying for it, which is
Nice.
sick. Good old privilege there. But I've always like been able like just collating music. Like I've just always gone like, oh, this is cool. And I always like started off like listening to pop and stuff and then becoming a bit more of a, oh, fuck pop music. Oh, this sucks. Yuck.
Yeah.
I don't want to listen to The Edge, and like try to start finding a lot new bands and like just keep on discovering and like just go down these rabbit holes. And I remember I used to go, oh, this is cool. Like starting with Frank Zappa, like just going through their related artists. Like who could I get to just going through their related artists? I may have not listened to the music, but I was like, how do I get maybe from Frank Zappa to Paramore
Right.
and stuff like that?
So
Like
sorry,
games.
you clocked Spotify.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So
in
like
that
I
context?
saved download too many songs on one playlist at one point. And at the time, I'm not too sure. I haven't done it again. It was like 3,333 songs or something like that.
In
you
the
can
one
only-
playlist.
Only download it. That's per device. You could download at a time.
Right.
I don't know if that's changed or not because I haven't gone that far yet. I probably have, or like gone closer and I haven't noticed. Because like sometimes if I want to go through an album or something, I might save like 3 or 4.
Sure.
And then like listen to them while I'm walking here and there. But otherwise, it's just been one major playlist or like a couple other side ones that I'll go back to.
That's so funny. Clocking Spotify.
I know. And it's like, because I remember like having like Run the Jewels and stuff and like all these albums like fully saved up. And then it's like, because that was when I used to just go, all right, using the like heart button. So it's like saves the whole album and go, oh, I'll listen through this, try and find the songs I like and stuff. Never would I. I would always get lost in it. But yeah, it was just always like, just keep on stacking up, always downloading and stuff. And yeah. And then one day it's like, what? I can't do more. So I'm like going through albums like I haven't listened to. And it's like, I like this band, but I actually never had to listen to their album except for like the one song. Going like, all right, bye. So I've lost a bunch of artists like I would listen to in high school, but like also a lot of them I just fell in love with and just moved on from and like grew out of.
Yeah,
like,
fair enough. Do you think Spotify is the place for streaming music? Like, do you think in terms of like ethics and what they're doing and how they're paying artists and things, do you think that's the platform to be supporting?
Their ethics are horrible. It's abhorrent. Like they should definitely pay at least a cent per stream. Because the thing is, there's a lot of artists on there that don't make a lot of money. Because when you actually look at it, oh yeah, these guys might be signed to a major label or an imprint of a major label. Each stream is like half a cent. They're not even getting that half a cent. And even if they're in a band, that half a cent is already being split in half and then being quartered again. And so that's not right. But the thing is, for discoverability, and because nowadays streaming is the platform that pretty much raises any artist from the ground up. Like, if you put something on streaming, it could become big, especially with TikTok nowadays. Sure. But I think Bandcamp is still the ultimate platform because especially with democratization of music, it is the best. And plus now, since COVID's happened, they've done Bandcamp Fridays where each Friday, 100% of all profits go straight to the artist.
No
I haven't bought anything during that time, sadly. I've bought a bunch of stuff off Bandcamp, but not always do I have money to. But those are like the best times to buy something off Bandcamp if you really want to support an artist. Yeah. Like even if it's just $1, like they'd get that full $1.
Yeah.
And it's like you could get an album of 100 songs. Kool AD's got it, and it's like his full, like it's a 4 or 5 disc album, and it's like 100 songs. It's got like Tori Moa features and stuff like that. Name your own price. You can say how much it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that before, and
Chance
have
the Rapper
done that.
did it as well.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, so I don't know much about Bandcamp apart from just like I know friends of mine that have released music on Bandcamp. It just seems like it's an easy place to upload. Would that be right? And
Pretty
like in
much.
terms of actually streaming, like is it sort of laid out the way that Spotify is where you can have playlists and stuff?
I'm not too sure. I haven't gone that deep into
Yeah.
Bandcamp. It's mainly like I just use it to, if I want to get something digitally, because I view that as just the same as buying a record in a way, except it's just on my phone. Or like I've got the files now. And even like maybe like the license, or not even a license to it, because you still need a license to play music. Sorry. Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I haven't really gone that deep into it. I do know you can stream off it, and especially if you're looking to maybe like just, dive your toes into one song to see if you want to buy this album. Like, if you're on the move, it's definitely the perfect place to do it. Like, if you're wanting to actually buy the album, I still would recommend. Well, I wouldn't recommend, but I use it. Spotify doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, it seems easier to do on Spotify that way, like the actual streaming part of it. But like I say, like the only time I've really used it is, presumably it's easier to and quicker to put stuff up on Bandcamp than is Spotify, because there's all this whole regime you have to go through on Spotify to get stuff out there.
I've never like been able to like understand that, like how people actually get that on Spotify, like upload, like. Because mainly I don't upload. I don't make music. I just listen to it. I'm a collector at heart. I just deep dive into things and almost obsess over them in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
For like a tiny period of time.
Yeah. From what I've heard from musicians that I know that are trying to put music on Spotify, it seems as though it's such a strenuous process to actually get the music up, or it's such a long lead time before you can actually have like a release date for something. So there's obviously tons of things that it goes through, and I presume when you have such a huge company or a huge brand like Spotify, there's a standard sort of to be kept, or an expectation if you're using such a premium platform that there's going to be music of a certain quality. So it probably has to, meet a certain loudness level and go through all of this stuff to be up there. Whereas I guess Bandcamp perhaps is not, where you can just sort of upload the music there and it's done. It's up like SoundCloud, put a track on SoundCloud, it's on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
Well,
No, Bandcamp is pretty much the same, like, because you can get all the different versions of the file.
Yeah.
So if you do buy the track, you can get it as a WAV, you can get it as an MP3, MP4, like all those different ones. I'm pretty sure with Spotify, it is definitely just compressed into MP3 because that is the most easiest one to consume.
And you don't actually get the track from Spotify, do you?
No.
You can download it to like your app memory, I suppose, isn't it? And play it offline, but you don't actually have the file.
No.
So it's
there are methods I've heard of, but I've never used them.
What do you think the purpose is, though, these days of having the physical track? Like if you're buying something off Bandcamp, aside from supporting the artist, what do you think is really the point of having those tracks?
Sometimes it's DJing, like a lot of DJs,
right.
because if you purchase a track, then it's like yours, especially a physical release, like having it on a vinyl. Like
That's
there's
true.
some DJs that use just straight vinyl. I do it because I buy records just because I just kind of obsess over them and having like something tangible. And even then, I've started like moving away from records. I buy cassettes, I buy CDs now. Like
you may have misunderstood. I mean, like if you're buying something off Bandcamp and you get the digital file. Do you think same principle? Like
pretty much that's the same principle for me. Like I view it as just the same.
Yeah.
Like it's just now in modern day. Like why wouldn't, like, because now we have things like NTFs, like non-fungible tokens and stuff for art. It's exactly the same, except just pretty much with music, like peer-to-peer and stuff. Yeah, you can get from free online, but with this, you're supporting an artist, and then B, you almost create this collection as well, showing like, oh, these are the tracks I've bought. Like, especially with Bandcamp, you see other people that bought these products.
Sure. Yeah, that's true.
And so I find that is really good because even then you can see this almost popularity. Like there's a lot of things that become big from Bandcamp. Like the whole vaporwave scene pretty much originated on Bandcamp at one point. Yeah. Like it was YouTube and Bandcamp were the main things that really pushed that scene, like the C-punk scene and stuff back in like 2012, 2010. And that's like the mid part of the scene. Like they've been going on for years prior.
Interesting. And was SoundCloud sort of happening at that time for like independent artists?
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely picking up steam. SoundCloud definitely blew up, of course, due to the phrase SoundCloud rap. But there was a lot of artists that were still uploading on SoundCloud prior. Like you could have gone on there. I remember like listening to remixes of tracks, like I think it was like EDM tracks in high school and stuff, finding them and like just going from SoundCloud to SoundCloud downloader and stuff. After finding them on like YouTube electronic music channels like Majestic or like Proximity or something like that.
Yeah.
And then just going like, I want this track. Where is it? Oh, there's a link for their SoundCloud. Boom.
Yeah.
Never paid for it, but
yeah,
of course.
but still, yeah. I think one of the big things that was good for SoundCloud and why a lot of people did well because of SoundCloud, and you had that whole era of SoundCloud rappers, was, I think, to what I was saying before about how strenuous it is to put songs on Spotify. People just want to get their music out there, so there's going to be more people putting their music onto a platform that's free, well, what was free at the time, and putting things up and having it up the same day. You know, that's what you want. You want to release it then and there for the most part. So I can see how that's sort of come to be, you know, people being able to just upload straight away.
It was the second wave of almost peer-to-peer. Because with peer-to-peer, like things like Napster and stuff, and then LimeWire, like that was like the first wave of it, where it's, of course, oh, these things are horrible because they're not paying the artist. And then, of course, SoundCloud came around where it's like, this is a dedicated space for you to upload your music if you want to, where other people can listen to it. Right. And so in that case, it was like, yeah, you're not getting it, but you're able to listen to it. It was like the first wave of streaming.
Sure.
And then, of course, now it's just now moved forward where, oh, people have realized this is an actual market, an avenue after Spotify, now Apple Music. And then thus creating this marketplace where you can actually create a career. Like people saw careers being grown because of Napster. Just because like, oh, we put it up there. This is the place we're putting our music. It's free to people. People want to listen to it. People get to know our name. We're now touring.
So what happened to Napster?
Napster, that was early 2000s, lawsuits. Like, of course, like you never would steal a movie. You'd never steal music. Why would you pirate these things? That was the problem, because it wasn't the labels releasing it. They weren't making money off it. Neither was really Napster, but like they also made a lot of money just due to like different things. I think like ads possibly. I don't know. I never used LimeWire or Napster because I was way too young. Didn't know how to use a computer. I was just worried about playing Flash games on it and stuff. So I had a friend that would download me music like Dynamite and stuff, like Tyler Crews, like, oh sweet, thank you for the USB, boom, put it on my Samsung MP3 player, stuff like that.
High school days.
Oh no, this is like intermediate primary for me.
Shit, yeah, it would have been too.
Yeah, so it was like I didn't know how to use them, and so I had older friends working for my dad that would do it for me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, funny.
Like, I was just inept with that. I'm like, I don't care. I'm running around and I'm watching Naruto at a young age and stuff.
So, but LimeWire is a whole nother thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
that was like torrenting.
It's still the same. It's still peer-to-peer, which is
what is that? What do you mean by that?
So that is just from one person having the file going to the next person having the file. So it's just one peer to another peer. So that's the phrase of just having that.
So once someone's got it can just be distributed.
So it's like once it's put it onto this place, you can take it. You can re-download it.
Right.
So that's the same with like pretty much Pirate Bay or anything. That's all peer-to-peer.
So is that what Napster was?
Yeah. It's literally uploading a file for someone else to download.
Oh, I see.
And there was a lot of sites
as to why it didn't work here.
Well, there was also a lot of sites that were prior that were specifically just for like Metallica songs or Nirvana songs. It's just that Napster was the first one that put them all together, getting all the files in one place for everyone to be able to grab.
Right.
And then that all led to streaming and stuff, and so on and so forth.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a really pathway that you can look at, and it's like even then, I think there would have been like you could even think of like jukeboxes as like one of the first kind of places. Like someone would buy a 45, put it into their thing. It's like, all right, these are the different tracks we have. Yeah. Like with CDs and stuff like that. Crown. Like, you could consider that peer-to-peer, I guess, to a degree. Like, you're just...
Yeah, kind of.
But it's not really, like...
Because you can't take it anywhere.
No, exactly.
Yeah. But still, like, that's an interesting point, though, still, that was still sort of the first streaming style of music that I could at least can think of.
Yeah, and it's this weird, like, kind of, like, snake Ouroboros, like, now it's just, like, recycling back, and, like, people are getting angry at it, or, like, they're loving it and stuff. It's always going to be this continuous evolution, just keep on revolving and stuff. Oh, they're going to gatekeep something else, and then, boom, it's going to become a commodification.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, crazy. Yeah. It's a weird industry, It's getting weirder and weirder.
It's a lot more difficult to navigate for artists. Like, I'm lucky enough, I don't make music, so I don't get
Same.
was it? I forget the word, but I guess hurt by the industry,
Right.
because like there's a lot of people out there that are giving people the resources to actually kind of take control of this, and especially being independent.
Yeah.
Because I found out about this site from Kenny Beats' Twitch, where you can actually calculate how much you would get from a record deal.
Right.
Where it's like how much an advance you would get, how much you have to pay that advance back, and like how much you would be in debt afterwards.
Whoa. Okay.
Because there's a lot of debt that accumulates. So like you see all these rappers with $100,000 gold chains and stuff, and it's like, yeah, you pay for it with your own money, but that's money you got from the record label to pay for your album.
Right.
And so like that has to be like, that money will go to the producers that make the album. And then, so you pretty much are just borrowing from a bank.
Right.
And the bank's just the record label.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, what is the answer then to be a successful musician or wealthy musician? I should say. Like, what route do you even follow? Like, 'cause obviously people are still doing well, but you know, at the rate that people are blowing up these days as well through like internet and stuff.
Yeah.
Is it sort of just being a matter of becoming as big as you can to really see like financial gain, do you think?
It can definitely help you, like being on those platforms and pushing your music. Definitely it can help. It can also shoot you in the foot putting all this time, because if you're independent, you have to be your own manager. You have to be your own press. You have to be your own this. You have to be your own that. Like, you have no one else helping you out. That's where a label comes in and really helps, like having an A&R and press people to push your music along. Otherwise, you have to send them to wherever to try and get external plays, like being on Radio 1. So that definitely helps. But I wouldn't know, because sometimes it's just the luck of the draw, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, especially now with TikTok, we've seen songs like back in like 2015. Yeah, they could have blown up, but they blew up then, but they wouldn't blow up on TikTok and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's definitely a time and place for artists as well. Like a lot of people that could have been bigger at a certain time, or people that are a bit late to the party, sort of thing. That's just kind of weird how like internet culture also decides who's sort of famous as well. Like I noticed, like I don't know if you've seen that Junebug challenge video, like one of those new dance.
I've heard of
videos.
the Junebug challenge.
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but I'm well aware of it.
No, but my interpretation of that, or at least the pieces of the puzzle that I've put together, is that this guy he'd already made dance videos on his Instagram, and then just happened to do this one funny dance with this particular song playing, and that seemed to gain a bit of traction because it was funny or whatever, or the song was kind of funny, whatever people thought was good about it. And then the next video he did, he hashtagged it with Junebug Challenge, and it was the same song, and it just sort of went from there, and doing that made the song that was with it popular as well.
Yeah,
which I think is such an interesting thing, like that sort of luck, because it just so happened that this one guy chose that song, and everyone's going, oh, now I need that song to do this challenge to as well, you know?
And you see that a lot now, but you also don't see the challenges happening because they're trying to push that.
Yeah, for
they're
sure.
trying to have that happen, but it won't all the time. It sometimes might, not always. Like I've seen a couple, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. I like this guy's song, and it's like, oh, they got a challenge. I'm not going to do the challenge, and then it's like, whew, like some people do it, but then it's like just gone to the ether.
I feel like where this generation is heading though is more towards that, because like look at how many people are using TikTok now. Like people just love to do dances to videos. Like it's just everywhere. Like, or at least in the echo chamber that I'm part of, or you know what I see on social media, it's just all people just doing dances and stuff. I feel like TikTok is sort of leading to be the new sort of social media. Like I wonder if that's going to sort of overtake a lot of what we actually use on our phones.
It definitely has.
Yeah,
it definitely has. Like I had a lecture today, and it's like they talked about TikTok being, this is if you want to engage with the Gen Z population, like 15 to 20-year-olds, like you should be on TikTok as a brand. You should be on TikTok to engage with them, because that's what the main deal is engagement.
Sure.
And it's like you even see that, like I remember the Running Man Challenge, that song was like 20 years old at the time, or like 15, I'm not too sure the exact dates, but boom, right to the top of the charts.
Yeah.
And it's like, only with this modern age could you see something like that happen.
Funny, yeah.
It's like, because we have access to everything now.
Mm.
And people don't realize that. I'm so glad that the phrase, oh my God, I was born in the wrong generation. I wish I was born in the 60s. I wish I could see Pink Floyd play and stuff, died at the change of the decade. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so glad I don't hear that anymore, because like I heard so many people, and it's like, I used to be that guy. It's like, oh, I wanted to see Led Zeppelin play. I wanted to see Pink Floyd. And it's like, yeah, I would love to see Alan Vega play CBGBs and stuff like that. These iconic venues in like New York City. But the thing is, like, I have got complete access to at least most of their printed discography. That's perfect to me. We have both everything new and everything old. Like, the only thing that's different is like we just have to wait for the next release.
Yeah, that's true. That's an interesting way to think about it. But I suppose when people are saying that, they are more talking about the live component of it. I suppose, like, you want to go see someone play. It's quite a whole nother thing.
Yeah, and I don't blame that. Like, I would love to have seen those guys in these iconic venues, like seeing Blondie or something play, like Talking Heads. Those would be amazing shows. And don't get me wrong, I wish I was there back in the day. But the thing is, it's nostalgia for nostalgia we did not have.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, we've just gone into these bands.
So
like, we never experienced these things in the current release of looking forward to the next Talking Heads album. Same with any Blondie album. Like, we've just now got access to them. The door is just open for us to walk back into.
So
we are allowed to see their live video recordings of them on stage that the people archived. And thank you to them for archiving them. But, like, we've never actually truly experienced it. So we've just got rose tints for no reason.
That's so interesting. I've never thought about that. That's so true, because, yeah, you never have actually. I mean, even the people that have come to like grow to like that sort of music is only just based on, usually from like, at least like people our age or our generation have sort of experienced that music sort of through their parents. So it sort of feels like as though that's a nostalgia thing. But you're right, you've never actually like experienced that. You just know to love the music, and it's a whole thing in its own. Yeah,
and like that I can understand, like having nostalgia for, like, oh, my father told me about this, or like having that moment of connecting with a parental figure or a brother figure or whatever figure, like, and having that relationship of that music. But like, still, it is, I guess, not selfish nor vain, but it's just unneeded.
Yeah, sure.
Like, well, not even that. It's just, like I said, you're creating this sense of nostalgia. Why do you want to desperately be there when you've got access?
Yeah, sure. That's a really interesting way to look at it. I've never heard anyone say anything like that. That's so crazy.
Yeah, like I just came to that realization one day, and I'm like, wait, if I was back in time, that means I have to wait until hearing this specific album that I adore. Like, I would not be able to listen to Eve's Tumor. I have to wait 40 years to listen to Eve's Tumor.
But I guess like you wouldn't know.
Exactly.
You wouldn't know what you're expecting. Like, you never know what like, one thing I've always sort of found interesting is that in my car, I sometimes listen to music on my phone, but I may just have the radio on. And in those times, I sort of just see how music progresses. And it doesn't necessarily have to be what's happening on pop radio, just generally what is going to be the new songs that are in my playlist. That's probably a better way to put it. What is going to be the new track? Like, you feel like a playlist is complete. I'm like, when's going to be the next new release that I fall in love with? You never know. And that's sort of, I don't know, that's the beauty of new music, I suppose. And you'd feel the same way if you were born in any era. Like, you just don't know what's gonna be in front of you, right? Like, how do you really, I guess, when you're talking about actually going back in time and living in a different time, there's so many up in the airs about what the actual like conditions are, like whether you still know what was happening in the future or whether you're actually put in that place. And then there's sort of the aspect of not even knowing that you had chosen to live in that time period, or whether you were conscious of the fact that you now live in this time period and you were living in this time period, you know, like, it's just sort of, we're getting probably too deep in this
well,
one.
Like, we've been graced with the ability of hindsight once something's happened. That's it.
Exactly.
And like, you can look into these acts and like, you see their influences. You see these trails that just is a snake. It's just eating its tail. Like, oh, Dinosaur Jr. did a track with Kurt Weill, which is a perfect thing because like it's going back to a bit of their roots. Like it's not so much grunge, but it's also like going back into like old school rock music. In this revival, they know that this person is doing something similar to them, and so they decide to work with them.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's just like these merging of ideas that may have not overlapped in the past now can.
Interesting.
And it's like you listen to No Wave and stuff from like the 70s, and then it's like you listen to, I guess, like really industrial, modern post-punk. Like it's gone so much more synthier and like digital, but it's got those same thematics. Like bands like Black Marble or they played Drab Majesty, like they played here and stuff, and like they've got this whole like really dark gothic sound that is like true to post-punk, but it's also like not as the same as Bauhaus or Susie and the Banshees, like even though that's a bit more like emo core or whatever. But I always mess up with genres and stuff. Like I always like twist them around. Like hyperpop I call maximalist pop and stuff because it's like pushing everything to the max.
That's like there's such fine lines between things as well, and so many artists want to, you know, not have their music labeled as something or make up a whole new genre for what they think their sound is. How do you really categorize what it is that someone's doing? At least I find in the sort of short range of music that I've listened to, I sort of struggle to think, oh, how is this? I can't even give you example categories, but how is this a subcategory of this category, and how is this a different subcategory of this, and what is really different about those two? Like, how do you even start to define music into those really niche subcategories? I just find it crazy. You obviously have to be so just deep within that lane of music or know it to be able to diversify, because like my number one genre that I listen to is hip hop, trap, rap music. And even then, like I struggle to sort of figure out like, well, what's trap, what's hip hop, what's whatever other subgenre of hip hop you want. Like you can hear blatant sort of differences in certain artists, but whether one is defined as trap or not, it's kind of, I feel like there's a fine line.
There definitely is. It's definitely nuanced. And it's like, yeah, you shouldn't always be categorized, but that's how we also work. We need category to separate things. Otherwise, everything's just going to be this weird amorphous blob where you could not define one thing from another.
But why do you think you need to, though?
It's just in human nature. It's just pattern recognition. That's all it is. Like, people have talked about for ages, like Joe Rogan goes on about it, and it's like, that's how we've survived. It's just pattern recognition. We've been able to see, oh, these people are singing sad songs with the guitar, and then they say that they're singing the blues, call it blues. Like, it's just like that recognition of pattern, like just seeing that revolve and then seeing how that shifts to like blues rock, where it's like, oh, this is heavier, taking a bit more of a rock and roll standpoint or whatever. Like, you can just categorize it in those forms. Like I said, not everything should be categorized.
No, but I suppose it's inevitable. Like you say, you do, like there's obviously a clear difference between blues music and hip hop music, a clear difference between jazz music and pop music, you know, like there's obviously very different, but like how far do you really need to go when it comes to subgenres? Like I say, like how, especially today, like the amount of music that we have to experience now, it's like, how do you even know what category to even like go with or start with or define something by?
Like, you could go so deep into someone's influences and call them avant jazz folk music if you so wanted to. That's just dumb. Like, you just call them avant-garde. Like, you can just simplify it, like, or like, oh, they're avant-garde but they're influenced by X and X. Right. Like, I don't believe in like creating these whole new dynamics. Like, hyperpop is like a one that stands out because there's so many people doing it at the same time with same thematics. Like, it started with PC music, and now it evolved from all these guys splitting up and like then producing for other people, turning it into this modern genre, where it's like just all these people started overlapping with one another. And then everyone just confirmed on this phrase on how to describe it.
Hyperpop. So is that what, like, sort of what 100 Geeks do?
Yeah. So that's what they were defined as.
Yeah.
And which I agree with. I like calling it maximalist pop because, like, instead of it's like everything's hyper, everything's been pushed to the max. All the bass has been pushed to the max.
Right.
And that started with PC music with guys like A.G. Cook, Danielle Harl, Sophie, R.I.P. All those people, like, they were one of the ones that started pushing that in like 2013, 2014.
Oh, so that's been around for a while.
Yeah, and like started out as bubblegum bass, which was described as because like it was like pop sounds with heavy bass patterns and like 808 drums.
Interesting.
And stuff like that. And so like those are like some of the defining terms of what people saw in those songs that they created.
Yeah.
And there were also extreme subversions of like the EDM genre.
Do you think like if someone was to present you with just a really obscure track, you'd be able to sort of at least define it? Because I know I definitely couldn't. Like if someone had delivered something to me that's so out of my knowledge or, you know, type of music that I listen to, I wouldn't be able to go, oh yeah, that's such and such, you know. Do you think you've got a general idea of like the genres that are available to narrow something down?
I feel like I've listened to enough, like I won't be able to confirm things, but I'll say, oh.
And not do it in the way you say, we sort of like create something random, but you go, oh yeah, this is this.
It's been influenced. I can hear some influence from this. Like, oh, this person might be influenced by Merzbow or something like that. And it's like, they've got such heavy, grainy noise that like burns your ears.
Yeah.
Or like drones on. And it's like, it might not be that. They might not define it as that, but that's what, to me, I can at least navigate their influences that way.
Mm. Do you think it's much easier to have influence these days? And do you think that is something that should always be sort of taken into account when making music? Like, I feel like because there are so much out there and there's so many genres, so many different people doing new experimental things, like I guess my question is, how do you be original in today's music world? Like with the amount that's out there, you've got to have influence from something somewhere, right? Like how would you what was the word? Spontaneously, I suppose, come up with something completely new. Like I just know at least whatever, you know, I've tried to do or heard people do is usually derived from something. Like,
yeah, well, that's the thing. Nothing you create is from a vacuum. It's always going to be influenced by something. Yeah, nothing's going to be original. Like even then, you could say cave paintings aren't original because they are representations of what was happening around them. Right. Like the truest form of experience is actually experiencing it for yourself. Like I'm not like Rothko would have been influenced by Manet and Monet and all those guys. Just he might not be exclusively saying like as his main influence. Like he might say like I'm not that deep into Rothko's history, but he might say like maybe, for example, De Burke would have been like an influence for him. But that's the thing. It's like all these guys have been through time just influence, creating these new things. And it's like almost like secondary, third, fourth generation influences. And it's like you don't realize it. Like pretty much everyone is influenced by Mozart to some degree, but like they're not explicitly because it's just gone through the chain.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it.
And like if you look at the first, like the person who invented the piano or the person that invented the guitar has essentially just paved the way for everyone else. Like that is sort of original in a way, but it would have come from something to think to go, oh, if I pull this string, it makes a sound. How about if I make this thing that makes this music, you know? But like you see that pretty much in everything now. A lot of music is derived from those like core instruments that were around.
Like instruments probably would be like the most original thing. Like, oh, how do we do this? Like having this, like, well, pretty much a drum is literally having a stick, hitting it.
Yeah.
And then where do you go from there? It's like, all right, you then create tension.
Yeah.
And then when you create tension, you can change the sound wave.
Yeah.
And then alter the wiggly air that it creates. And like the more you change those different things, like having creating space, removing space, always change things. Like pianos are technically a percussion instrument because you're playing keys and the keys have another thing and it's like bing. And just different things like that. I'm not an instrument genius.
Well, that's funny because I think you pretty much just answered my next question, which was going to be, or at least thought, which was it's crazy how the format of a 4-person band, a lead guitarist, a bassist, a drummer, and perhaps a secondary guitarist or whatever you call that role, how that format is still around, you know, like that's been around for ages. Like the concept of a band and those core instruments is still around, and people are still finding ways to manipulate it and do something different with it, which is crazy because, like, again, how far can you really go with those instruments alone? Like, and then like you say, there's so many ways to manipulate that sound that comes from that one thing in your own unique way. But I guess to our point and what we're talking about, is it all comes from something. It's no one starts a band and starts something original because you started a band. Like there's already been bands, you know, if you take it to that sort of core aspect. If
you make something whereas like you haven't listened to anything, like you've grown up in a vacuum, never listened to music, just maybe listen to like nature and stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I want to start a band. You probably would not be able to become successful because you wouldn't have known what like technical, like structured music was. It'd become not even freeform jazz. It'd become this weird mangling of sounds where it's just like screeches and stuff, which is pretty much what noise music is to a degree, but it's controlled. Like with that has a lack of control. Like to say that isn't music is subjective, but that is something that is coming from nowhere except for like the outside world.
If you don't have a concept of tempo or rhythm or melody, then it doesn't really, well, it can still be music, of course, like something like noise, but you know, these days that's the general sort of
format.
Yeah, for music. So if you go in to start making sound without any prior knowledge of how a song, quote unquote, is made in that context, then you can end up anywhere, right? And then what do you really have to work with if instruments aren't already made as well? Like where do you even start to become organic when it comes to being a musician? It's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like, especially bands nowadays, the coolest thing is like seeing how they work pedals, and even then the people that make pedals and stuff.
Yeah, that's fun.
Like, well, it's like there's so much minutia to it, like having like this creates this specific sine wave or this specific tone, which alters then your guitar, and if you feed it through different things, that can change it even more. And it's like it's the same thing. It's like just creating this weird map, and like of course people probably have done the same setups, but it's like how you use that is different.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's with people that it's funny how all sound and music comes from just a waveform as well. That's the one thing that I sort of boggled me when I started working with music production software on my laptop, being like, learning how to use a synth is literally just bending the shape of like a line to create a sound. It's fucked.
Repeating it, and then layering it, and then adding more to it, and then turning that. I want to turn it into a house track, maybe adding drums, or even more. If you want to turn it into a drone track, it's like adding static or something like that.
Which
or
is
like,
all sound waves again. And and it's funny because like you think you're adding so much to this the sine wave, for example, that you're like, oh, and a reverb and a chorus and that's just sort of other dimensional because it feels so euphoric and you know crazy. But then when you go to record the track, or you listen to it back, or it's recorded and spit it out and put it back in, it's still a waveform. So there's just such minute changes in that waveform. It's just crazy, man. It's such a weird concept, and crazy to think that there's so many new sounds and things coming out and different ways that music is made, and the amount of mastering and mixing and tedious little things that goes into altering music still comes out as a jagged line.
Yeah. And like one of the cool things is just bringing in different ideas internationally from music. Like one of the coolest things are like these new instruments that, like, have you ever seen that key? I don't know what it's called, but it's the keyboard that doesn't have keys, and it's just like one like kind of board where it's like you put your finger. It's almost like a theremin, but
I was going to say theremin.
And it's like you can just adjust it wherever. And it's like, all right, you can control like almost the key and like alter the tone as you're playing it, wherever you put your finger on.
Yeah.
And it's almost like then you're accessing microtones, which are not common in Western music, but are extremely common in Oriental, Asian, African, and like Arabic music. And it's like, this isn't anything new, but it's like for us in the Western world, it's like, oh my God, King Gizzard released a microtonal album. Like, what is this? This is blowing my mind. It's like, these have existed for ages, but we just never heard it.
Crazy. And I guess if you take it back to like really raw music in those cultures, a lot of it doesn't have sort of like drum tempo. You think about like Asian like flute music and that sort of thing. I don't know if that becomes microtonal like what you're saying, but like a lot of that music is, I guess, slower and more sort of raw, empty, skeletal, and authentic, and sometimes drawn out to the point that those tones sort of aren't, because you're not necessarily working in a key. I don't know this for sure, but it seems as though the reason that is sort of working in that area is because you're not really worried. You're sort of following where the note's going rather than going, oh, this all has to hit here and here and here to all be constructed into Western sort of music.
And it definitely
like you say.
is like going back to pedals and stuff. It's about the construction. It's
Yeah.
like these guys, they pretty much were like, okay, if we play through a reed, that makes sound. What if we add holes? And that's the same thing with creating a flute. And it's like you have the two different differentiations of it, where it's like, oh, they just pretty much put the holes in different locations than what the people in like Europe did. That's it.
Crazy.
And it's like, that's how they just got different tones and how they developed their sound. It's the same thing that they both sides did, except just different and just didn't cross over for a long time because I guess racism being one thing and then just separate parts of the world. And it's like, of course, we didn't have transport then, yada, yada, and then just slowly overlapping.
That's crazy, though. It seems as though it was like meant to be in a way that it would all sort of come together and be this sort of world-renowned thing that you can take aspects from everywhere rather than all being sort of separate, and sort of the concept of the unknown of what else is out there, like, and even the concept of knowing like another country with different kinds of people that would be doing the same sort of thing but in a completely different way with what they have around them is crazy too, man.
Yeah, it's great. Like, especially it does, there's only one problem. It's like then you get into like a realm of possible appropriation, which is always difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
And I find difficulty navigating it as well. But the thing is, like, if you are well educated, I feel like, and you're able to explain why you're doing these things, you're not necessarily, like, you are honoring the tradition.
Yeah, sure.
You're not just, like, going, I like this is now mine, I invented this. No, it's like you have to be aware of who created it. Like, you know the lineage of it all.
There's a fine line there too, I think, as well, because, like, a lot of, say, like that Whoop-De song by CJ. Have you heard that?
I think I may have. I'm not too
Regardless, it uses a sample from an Indian, I don't know if it's like a movie or a musical play or something like that, but you can find it on YouTube, the sample. It's an Indian man's voice singing the song, and that seems as though it's like, could come under the category of appropriation because you're basically just taking, like any sampling, I suppose, in that regard can be classed as that because you're taking something, in this case in particular, because it's from a different culture. Granted, that's already sort of popular within that sort of their country, I suppose, and their culture. You know, where what's the excuse there to use that sample just because it sounds cool? I think that there's a fine line there too, to be like, okay, well, this is, or like, I have permission to use this, is probably where you sort of define whether it's okay or not. But again, it's like the only reason that seems to be being used because it's a nice sound, not necessarily because it's culturally associated with the artist you're the producer, you know. Like,
I'm not going to say it's culturally appropriate to do it, but the thing is, like, you can do it. Like, is it the right thing to do? No, probably not. Like, I do believe you should have knowledge of where things come from and you should be educated on it, especially in this post-colonial society we now live in. Well, even half, like, we're still colonial quite a bit, but there's a lot of ideas surrounding it. Like, where it's, like I said, it's a tightrope you have to walk. It's like, where do you draw the line of you're just stealing this culture or you are respecting it? And it's like, you could pay, and it's like, I have purchased this sample to use this because I love it so much. I view that as a form of like reparations, where it's like, okay, I might not be educated in this, but I'm at least giving you something. It's not still the best thing in the world. You should be educated, but that is still a way of working around it. And it's like trying to find that balance.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, that's a fine line. It's just as long as you're taking the right approach. And I think these days, especially if you're in the genre of making hip-hop music where sampling is pretty dominant, you do have to be pretty onto it when it comes to sampling and making sure you are able to access your permissions before you even do it. You know, like, how hard would it be for me to reach out to a sample like what is used in that song that I was talking about, you know, like, who do I even start to contact to organize this sample being used, you know? It's such a weird
like,
thing.
who owns this rights to these musics now?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like, where do I go to? Like, who am I supposed to talk to? Like, it might have been reissued by some label and now this label owns the rights to it, but like, we don't know that. Like, we can try and find things. Like, most of the time you can see like a little tag, but if it's independent, the person's dead. It's like, well, damn, where do I go to now? Like, you kind of get at these loose ends.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but yeah, like you said, does it go with points?
Yeah. I think what seems to happen, at least this is my guess, is that when a song does gain such popularity like that, like you obviously, like when you're making something from scratch, if it was someone like me, for example, that is not a musician and doesn't have any ties to labels or anything, it's just purely just me in my bedroom making a song, I could grab whatever I want and just make something, that's fine. But it's when it starts to gain popularity that you need to go, okay, well, I need to do this. So presumably, like, it seems as though the songs that are big and popular and people are listening to and are being exposed to, that song, is probably tied to a label in some way, shape or form. Now all other artists have been signed, so then you have them to sort of back you up and get those permissions, because independently trying to find the permissions or rights to something from something that's on the other side of the world, and goodness knows where it came from or what that label was, you have at least other people there that are in the industry that can sort of find these things as well, because it's such a weird task to have to go like, hey, can I use 5 seconds of this movie from like 10 years ago? Whatever.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a language barrier involved and stuff, and like, thank God there's like some labels like Awesome Tapes from Africa and stuff like that, who are releasing these tracks that may have been lost by time and reissuing them for people to hear, because there's such an in-depth like knowledge that I never realized. Like, people are starting to like go in deep because of the internet, being able to find out about African heavy metal music and stuff like that. Or for me, I've fallen in love with like African disco, like Omalek and Professor Rhythm and stuff. They're so good, and like I've fallen like so deep, like influence. All of them are like influenced by James Brown and stuff like that, and like all these funk and soul acts. And then after they've come to Africa and like influence them, maybe help them get started possibly, or like, oh, they've made enough money that they're able to like do some studio time while their country was rich, which a lot of those kind of guys did. It allowed them to access these materials to make these musics to the same degree, and it is perfect. Like, there's a lot of tracks that, like, I've just found as like shared with people. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Why have I not heard of this? Like, why were these not popular here in the rest of the world?
Yeah,
but like, then again, there was like this weird gatekeeping because of transport and transit of items and goods and whatnots. Like, they sometimes just never made it across waters.
Yeah, that's crazy. There's so many depths to those things, though. It's weird. How do you feel about? I've heard this song has been on the radio recently, and I think about this a lot, and it sort of bothers me, and also just makes me wonder, how do you feel about someone basically just doing a cover of a song and releasing that?
I'm fine with it. Like, there's a lot of great covers out there. There's one cover I have fallen in love with, and in the past 2 weeks, it's just recently been released, and it's Shamir's cover of Billie Eilish's Ocean Eyes. It's completely fine. Because if you look back, like a lot of bands back in the day, like Aretha Franklin covered the Beatles a bunch of times. Well, I think it was Nina Simone covered, was the one, Here Comes the Sun. One of the most beautiful versions of the song I've ever heard. Like, you can cover it like word by word and just do it straight, like copy everything and release it and stuff. Yeah. That's fine. That's cool.
Yeah,
like,
I'm all for it too.
Yeah.
I'm nothing against covers. There's some covers that I love. Specifically, this one I'm talking about, I don't have the facts to back me up yet, but I've never heard of the artist that's done the cover. I've only heard it on the radio. So I can't even remember what the original song's called, but it's that Girl Put Your Records On, Tell Me Your Favorite Song.
Oh, yeah.
Just go ahead, let
Toby
your head
Callie
in.
and stuff, yeah.
So it's a cover of that song by a male. And I sort of just think, well, fine to do the cover, like if you've got permission to do it. But it seems as though they've just sort of made that cover to gain popularity rather than make an original song. That was my concern. It was like, who is this person that's now on the scene just doing the same song of what's already there? Again, I don't know if that's true, but I'd never heard of them. So I was like, well, do you have any other music? Because it's kind of weird that you've just
come out
top
of the blue.
40 with this song that already exists. You know, I just find that concept kind of weird.
And sometimes that's industry backing. And it's like, oh, they used to play this at the bar and they got picked up for that. And it's like, oh, that was like a recording. It's like, all right, this is your single. This is what we're going to push out and stuff. And it's like, all right, cool. Like, especially if you're like a first time signing to a label, I I've never been, but it's like you hear stories of these, and it's like the industry just pushes you in this direction.
Sure,
it's like this is what you're doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great covers, and I definitely think like the best point of a cover is to reimagine these tracks. Like I said, Nina Simone doing Here Comes the Sun, turning it into this soul, like really downplay, like just straight piano and just her vocals. Beautiful. Comparing it to like kind of, I don't remember what Here Comes the Sun from the Beatles actually sounds like because I've only ever listened to the Nina Simone version.
Well, funny, I'm the opposite. I don't know if I've heard Nina Simone, but I could definitely hear the original.
Yeah, like for me, it's like I've just now, this is my version of the song.
Yeah.
I love this version way more than original. So
Yeah.
I just obsess over that one.
It's cool. That I do like that. Yeah, and I'm definitely not saying covers are bad or anything. This just one particular one seems odd, but yeah, there's definitely some. I don't particularly like him as an artist anymore, but I like Post Malone's cover of that Fleetwood Mac song. I don't know if you've heard that one.
I probably have. I like his version of Bob Dylan, Don't Think Twice.
Is that one of his really early ones, like before he was famous on YouTube
that,
sort of ones?
like,
I think I've seen that.
Because I do enjoy my Bob Dylan like folk music and stuff as well. But yeah, that one is good. But it's like that's one that's like extremely similar because like he's just jamming and he's like just recording. It's like that's it. And I think covers are like we've both agree on like they're completely fine. I think one of the things I really want to see is this, I guess, fear of covering a song from another gender in a way. And it's like just changing some of the lines. Like, just don't care about that anymore. Like, if you're going to cover the song, just cover the song fully. Like, yeah, you change things up, but it's like, don't worry if you're saying like, oh, I'm a guy, and it's like, oh, she's talking about, I'm singing a song from a girl, and she's singing about another guy. It's like,
I see what you're saying.
Don't worry about that. Like,
Yeah.
if you already enjoy the song, that shouldn't be a worry of that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. There shouldn't be the need to change the pronouns of a song to fit the gender of the person that's
like,
covering it.
Oh, I don't want people to think I'm gay or something like that. It's like, who
So
cares?
people
Like,
will probably know the song
people-
you're covering.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Get
like that's the song. It's like, all right, cool. Like,
I think, initially don't worry. Like I know if I was a musician and was covering a song, I wouldn't change the lyrics if it was a female artist, unless. What I'm trying to say, like, definitely don't if the way that you change it or the word that you change affects the melody of it as well. And the other thing too,
point.
like with covers, is like it's one thing to make it your own. And instrumentation can be a big part of that. You can have the same sort of melody, but be a different instrument or a different drum pattern or something. But people are going to probably listen to that and sing along. So if you change too many lyrics, like people are going to go, oh. Because I know I've done that when I've listened to a cover. I've been like singing along and then go, oh, they changed the word. And you sort of have that like moment of just like, oh.
yeah, no, there's one cover of that, which is, I think it's done the worst way, but it's also the best. And I forget what it was. It's like, it's the Problems by like 2 Chainz and like A$AP Rocky and stuff like that. And
the censored version?
yeah, kind of, but it's like he changes of course, the N-word in it to Wigga. And it's like, oh my God, dude, you've just posted cringe. But it's like, it's just so funny. It's like, you go through the comments, it's like, this dude really just out here saying just to get around. It's like, just say something else or don't say it at all.
It's honestly the easiest word to change out if you need to. Like, there's so many things
it's like,
you could use
dude,
instead of that.
honestly. But it's like, it's the worst for all the best reasons because it's just so horrible and tone deaf.
Yeah.
And it's like, just takes everything out of context. But it's like, it's just the perfect reason. Like, maybe you shouldn't cover X song for this reason.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You love the song, you adore it, and I understand where you're coming from, and it's from a good place.
Yeah.
But you also need to know you probably shouldn't do it if you have to
definitely.
do it.
And also, if there's too many of that particular word there to have to change out as well, probably comes to a point where it's like, well, the song's not even a song anymore. And that also reminds me of popular songs that have a lot of curse words that get censored on the radio and censored poorly. And that's one thing that really bothers me. And they had that song on the radio. Actually, I don't even know if it was on the radio. It must have been on TV. I'd seen it somewhere. It's called, what is it called? My N-Word by Young Thug and whoever else is on that song. The whole chorus is essentially that word.
Yeah.
like
I'm
at
well
least
aware,
like
yeah,
12 times.
Like,
you know,
I feel like
it's like
if you're
why
gonna,
even fucking put it on the radio or TV?
no, if anything, if you're going to censor it like in the most overt way possible, and just put the bleeps, like just heavy
Yeah.
bleep, like bleep.
Yeah,
And it's just like, I feel like that'd make it so much better, because then
Yeah.
it's just like, what else are you supposed to do? Like, this is how we're censoring it. It's like, you might as well, like I said, push it to the max. It's like, we're censoring the song.
Yeah,
like, we're
yeah.
not doing anything creative with it. Boom. Here's just
yeah, exactly.
overt, blatant censorship.
God, that's so funny and so true. But if you're gonna censor something, like do it properly. I mean, I've heard censored versions of songs. Granted, this is on the radio at my work, so it's an orchestrated playlist of songs. But man, whoever's cutting the lyrics out of those songs, it needs to be fired, because they're not bleeping it out.
Sometimes
They're
just
literally-
silencing and cutting the volume points. Sometimes is
Oh, they're literally cutting the word out.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're relaying or something else. So the tempo is completely shot. Like they just take the word out and it just jumps, like skips forward, and it's like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's the most infuriating thing.
I kind of love those moments though, because when you just listen, it's like, oh, here's this one. Here's this one.
Here's
I
the
hate
drop.
it so much. And it's like, oh, there it is.
There's one song I think that's come out in the last couple of years. It's a Fetty Wap song, and it's with some other pop group. I'm not sure what it's called. If the lyric is like, it feels great, motherfucker, yeah, or something like that, and then it drops and it plays at my work and it goes, it feels great, mother, and then just drops.
Yeah.
It's just completely out of tempo. You like build up, yeah. It's just completely
I
ruined.
love those moments way too much, where it's just like this.
I see the
distorted-
humor in it, but it's
Yeah.
like you hear it enough times, the same song. It's like, oh, for God's
Yeah,
sake.
you get over those a
Yeah.
lot. It definitely becomes to the point where it's like you just don't want to hear it. Like I remember when I was working at Cobb & Co, it's like, man, I hate this place, and I just started putting on like unknown UMO. I'll just say UMO because like I always say UMO instead of Unknown Mortal Orchestra.
Yeah,
Tongue twister.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but like putting on LCD sound system, Bjork and stuff like that, things that should probably not be played in a family restaurant, because like they're slight, like especially Bjork, like so quiet, like it's such a weird song, but oh, it's such a good song, and especially like just kind of seeing people like kind of go, what's this? Like especially people that have never heard it before, and like going like, what is this thing? Oh, I don't know what this is. This is strange to me. I don't like it. And I'm like, dude, just ride with it.
Just fuck it. The amount of shit we have to listen to in other restaurants,
Oh,
some music
God,
that we
yeah.
don't like, we don't say shit about it.
Well, like I've had so many people like just like I've tried to get like friends. Now they're a lot more receptive to it, but like in the past it's like, oh, do you want to come to this gig? Do you want to come to that? And like they go, no, that sounds stupid, like just because of the band name. I think the band names are great here in New Zealand. Like
They are.
honestly, like especially like DJ names, like the guys up in Christchurch, like Keanu Reeves and Bob Dylan. Beautiful names. And then it's like Cootie Cuties and stuff like that, or not Garden Single, but like just there's so many great ones. Koizilla down here.
Fantastic.
They're like there's so many you can like list off, and I can't do it off the top of my head. I need to like go through my phone, like scroll through them all. Like Bunnies on Ponies, such a great name.
Fantastic.
Like there's so many awesome ones out there that people just like, they just tune off right as you say it because they think it sounds dumb and they don't think it's something serious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you just let that phase out, or do you physically
I've
do
gone
something
in-
about it? I mean, like,
No,
how,
I'm just like, well, all right, you're missing out. Like,
yeah. Well, that's it, isn't it? It's
like I would tell them like, oh, I'm going to a free gig.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no, we're not going to come. It's like, it's free. It doesn't matter if you like the music or not necessarily. Like, you might enjoy it. The main reason for me to go to them was like, oh, this is free music. Worst case scenario, it might be stupid. I'll just get drunk.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it.
or just leave.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't have to pay anything. It's like if I hate it so much, I'll go downstairs, leave the cook, and just
Yeah.
right out the door.
Even if I pay for a gig and
Yeah.
I don't like it, I leave. Like,
Yeah,
No
exactly.
one's forcing you to do anything.
But it's like these are bands like Yokozuna who ended up playing like Bay Dreams and Rhythm and Vines like later years, and like I talked to people after them playing Rhythm and Vines, and it's like, oh, yo, Yokozuna, that's awesome. I saw them play live. They were great.
Yeah.
And it's like I remember when I saw them for the first time. It's like he pulls out the saxophone. It's like, where'd the saxophone come from? Oh my god, this is so cool. It's
Yeah.
like you never like, I never got to see that in like these 4-piece bands where it's just like, they just have got so many different instrumentation and like practices that just was like, it blew my mind.
Yeah, sick. So cool, man. Do you need something else to drink?
I'm good, but thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So you're someone, you say you're a collector of music, like you're not a musician. Have you ever dabbled? Have you ever tried to make music?
I've learned clarinet in intermediate school. I didn't really go to lessons or anything like that. I kind of ditched them. Sorry, mom and dad. But
I feel like anyone that has such an interest in music will.
Any dedication really to those kind of things. Like I wanted to learn saxophone in intermediate. I got put into clarinet because my grandfather played clarinet. I don't regret learning it, but I didn't have the dedication, nor did I want to really at the time. And same with I tried piano and stuff. I've tried. And I want to learn possibly. Like I think bass is really cool. I think synthesizers are really cool, and like drums are really cool. But I know I don't have the patience for learning them. But I just like I said, I'm a collector. Like I collect a lot of things really, and I've been doing it for most of my life.
That's cool. I like that. I feel like I'm more of a hoarder than I am a collector.
No. That's one of the same thing. Like I hoard my stuff in a way. Like I definitely have approached like minimalism is overrated. It's now time to be maximalist goblins and stuff like that, hiding our hoards in our caves and stuff like that.
That's funny. I like minimalist looks of some things. Like I think aesthetically, like living space and things. I quite like that. But I just do have so much stuff that I just can't give up. I can't adapt to that lifestyle.
Yeah, and I believe in it aesthetically. Like it looks beautiful when you see something super pristine, clear, with nothing on it. But also, like you need to also appreciate the majesty of having just so much clutter and having it like so well organized as well.
That's fantastic.
Have you ever seen like David Hockney's house?
No,
because there's a YouTube channel called Nowness, which like they release like art films and stuff. One of them was like, going into people's houses and stuff, and one of these artists had bought David Hockney's house, and it's like you just see these stacks of books on like full bookshelves and like stacks of books on the floor and stuff like that as like side tables and whatnot, and it's just like the perfect level of everything is like just balanced, where it's like you've got all these things like just scattered around the place, but it's like in that controlled chaos.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I love that. I love that a lot, and I've only recently done that here at the studio. Like I had so much clutter, and it's crazy how much it like just a couple of storage boxes helps.
Yeah, no, I'm like I don't have the controlled chaos. It's just chaos, and I kind of love living in chaos, but it's also like infuriating.
Yeah. So with music, you don't have you say you don't have the patience to learn. Like, is it just like a frustration with not getting to a result like as quick as you wanted to, or you just don't genuinely just have an interest in playing an instrument?
Oh no, maybe patience isn't the word. It could be more dedication.
Sure.
Because like I said, I become obsessive over these things, and then I kind of then move on to the next. And like I'm still kind of obsessed with these things, but then it's like I'm on to that next thing where it's like, I am obsessing over this new genre or this new instrumentation. Like a couple years ago I was obsessed with synths, and I wanted to make synths, and I still kind of do, but the thing is like you need to get the materials for it. Like there is like this level of financial gatekeeping,
for sure,
where it's like you cannot get into these things unless you have the funds to get into it. And most of the time I'd be spending my money on other things like buying a new record, buying a new t-shirt, or buying some shoes or something like that, or going out and stuff. Like little things like that, putting it off instead of putting like that, dedicating those funds to this thing I was obsessing over.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. And I suppose like at the end of the day, if you're just okay with the fact that it's not going to happen, then it doesn't really matter. It would be a shame to think that that was something that you really wanted to actually do, but were stopped by financial problems or just the thing being so niche that having access to those things is so scarce as well.
And like, especially with synths, like, you can make them for fairly cheap, because like it's literally just creating, like pretty much putting in wires together to create sound. That's pretty much like the most simplest form. It's super cheap. All you really need to do is create a frame, and that's probably the most expensive part. And there's a lot of other steps from that where you can get a lot more complicated. Like there's a lot of history. Like Suzanne Chicani, who's like the godmother of synths. She like, you just look at her instrumentation, it's like she is extremely dedicated. Like this is her lifestyle. Like she lives and breathes this instrument. And it's like, I could never get to that level.
Yeah.
Because she has been obsessed with it from such a young age that she made this her career. She adored it that much. She went on David Letterman and showed that off.
This is something I think about so often. It's like the people that are truly dedicated and have a passion for what they do have always done it. And you're never going to be able to replicate that. And that's something that I've just come to accept, that I'm never going to be super, super passionate or very, very good at any one thing because I haven't loved it from day one, like when I was a kid, you know, because that's why the people that are doing what they're doing so well, and especially younger people, because they've had so much more time to actually do it. And there was a point where I was living with the boys from the Jack Berry band, and they were already so far ahead that in itself made me so excited to try music.
Yeah.
But then I realized once they started playing shows and things, I was like, these guys have been doing this for so long and they're only here now. It's not like I can just jump on and be a part of that straight away. It doesn't work like that. Like I haven't had the years of experience in music to know what to expect, or, you know, to have the talent that they have. It was like, I just had to, and that shouldn't have still turned me off, but it just made me realize, like, there's actually so much that has to be done here. You can't create a passion out of thin air, you know. Like, you can be super interested in something that you see and go, oh, that would be cool to do that and try that, but I don't know if you can call it a passion unless you seriously, like, fall in love with it, I suppose, and are doing it for the rest of your life. It's hard to sort of gauge, and like I say, I don't think I have anything like that. I don't even think about painting yet. Like that, I'd say that would be my thing, but I still don't think it's something I'm actually passionate about. I love doing it, but whether it's a talent or a passion or a lifelong thing, I don't know, because I haven't really done it up until the last couple of years. Yeah,
well, like, especially being surrounded by people like the Jack Berry Band and other creatives that are so well engrossed in these areas, it's a double-edged sword. Like, if you follow, like, this inspires me to make music as well, that can also cause you to be disencouraged.
Yeah.
Where it's like you're watching these people succeed, and then it's like, yeah, you understand how much they've dedicated, and it's like, you need to dedicate. It's the 10,000 hours rule that everyone knows. But it's like, even if you're working towards it, it's like, oh, they can help you, but then it's like, they can only push you so much.
Exactly.
And then you have to follow through. It's a rather like, you're either going to cut yourself on the blade, or you're going to learn how to use it properly. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. And that's, again, well, it comes back to a patience thing, like whether that was what you thought was the right word or not. That is totally one thing you have to have.
It's perseverance and both patience.
Definitely. And I think also what will define how you thrive in that field is whether it is patience that you're using, or whether you are just driven so much by passion to do the task. Because I feel like if you're relying on having good patience to do something, it might not necessarily be something you actually want to do. Do you know what I mean? Like it sort of gets to a point where it's like, I have to dedicate so much time to this that I'm losing interest in it, or, you know, I'm not getting the results that I want so quickly, so I'm losing interest in it, you know. Whereas people that would genuinely love it, or have either been doing it from day one, or have just discovered it and just have absolutely fallen in love with it, that their passion and drive for doing it just takes them past, and they don't even think about patience, you know.
Yeah, and one of the more interesting things on that note, I always find it more interesting, those are people that do it out of spite.
Yeah.
Like, that they are so driven to prove someone wrong that they will pick up something new and dedicate themselves to this thing because they're that angry, that drives them to do that. And I don't have that. I don't have that. I'm an extremely lazy person, and I'm well aware of that. And I don't like that. I also do, because I don't...
Being lazy is great.
Yeah, it is. You need everything you need to find a balance in. But it's like, I wish I could have that drive at points. Like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. Like, I want to follow things through and stuff, but it's like, I'm not too sure where my path is going to lead.
I love that. I love that you can say that, though, because I feel the exact same. And I think that's something in itself to be able to say, I'm not one of those people that can really get those results or be as successful as they am, but I can do what I can do to best of my ability. And that's, I think, where I'm sitting right now. I've sort of accepted the fact that music probably isn't going to go anywhere for me. I'm at a point where skating has been something that I've been super passionate about my whole life, but never really put in the time and effort to get good at it. So that's probably something I'll continue doing, but not something I'm ever going to be great at. I've accepted that, still love it, but it's not going to be something I thrive in. This, I don't think, is much of a skill apart from, I guess, the talking side of things, but this, I don't know what this is going to be, but I've just accepted the fact that it's cool. I guess this is why I sort of have done this, to have these conversations about this and sort of find other people that are feeling in the same sort of way inclined. But
is the jack of all trades and master of none. And it's like you can either master something or you can diversify. I believe in diversification and gaining as much knowledge. Like, am I great at accumulating knowledge? Sometimes, not always. Depends. I've been lucky enough to I'm now doing 2 radio shows for Radio 1, one of them being The Drive, and now also the art show. I'm doing design school. I am working in the film industry now. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing multiple things that I can see pathways that can develop. Do I know how to maybe access those pathways? Not always, but I can start creating them. Even if I don't do radio for my whole life, which I probably won't, I can do some kind of broadcasting. I can do streaming if I wanted to. I've now got this backbone.
I love that.
Skill.
I love that. And just to be able to at least have something else there that you can be moderately good at or are moderately interested in, that you can fall back on that if something does fail. Like if you are pursuing a career in, say, radio, and that doesn't happen, where you can go, oh, at least I have something else that I'm interested in that I can pursue as well. That's what I feel like the position I'm in, is that if something doesn't work out the way I want to, I know that I know enough about this other topic or interest that I can sort of just go and put more time into that. And that's sort of where I've found myself flowing recently, is again, I say painting's my main thing, but I've been doing a lot more DIY stuff recently, and that will probably phase out soon, and then I'll be back into music probably for a bit, and then they'll be like, right, that's sort of coming to an end, so I'll be back to painting. And I've just accepted that, rather than being like, oh, I need to do this today, or I need to do that today because that's my thing at the moment. I need to have a thing. I'll sort of just go, well, fuck, I mean, who am I trying to impress here? It's myself, really. So why not just be like, well, okay, I don't want to do that today, I want to do this. So just do that instead. It's just I like that, jack of all trades, that saying you just said, because I feel like it's a lot more fun to know small things about a multitude rather of hobbies and interests and topics, than to be all in on one thing. As fantastic as that is too, I think that's a nice little.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things I want to learn, so many skills, but it's also, I'm well aware I'm never going to be able to follow through on these. I've talked to friends in these areas like tattooing. It's I would love to get into tattooing, but I'm well aware I do not draw enough.
Right.
I obsess over the imagery. I obsess over all the aspects. I want to learn how to build a machine and stuff like that. And I've said in the past about synths during our discussion, it's I've learned about how to do it, but I've never actually done it. And I obsess over these things, and I accumulate this knowledge instead.
Yeah, which is cool, because a lot of those skills are usually transferable as well. The fact that you even want to try and build something does not necessarily mean, just because you can't or don't want to commit to making the one thing doesn't mean you can't not make something else. You know? Because there's tons of things that you can make, generally speaking. And that in itself is probably going to bring something up at some stage. That's what I've found. I love looking at something in a shop or online and being like, oh, I'd like to buy that. Hang on, can I actually make it for myself? To me, that's so much more fun. I'd rather spend more money buying the materials and making it myself than I would often going and buying something if I knew I could make it and do it reasonably well,
Yeah, I'm kind of a bit of a difference. If I want something, I want it not perfect. Well, actually, no. I probably want it to my standard.
Sure.
And that's the problem. When I try and do those things, it won't be up to my standard because I'm just learning it. Like I've tried silkscreen in the past. I'm probably going to do a night class later this year and try and actually start learning the thing. But when I first did it, it's like, yeah, this is good enough for a first time.
Yeah.
And it's like I didn't put enough pressure on it. And then like the more I look at it, it's like I'm not going to wear this shirt because
Right.
it's not up to my standard. In my mind, is like this is technically ruined, even though it's not. But it's like it's stuck on there. Like, yeah, I could probably put another big black blob over top of it to hide it, and then put something else over top and keep on layering and layering and layering and create something new. But it's like at that point, I was just like looking at it. I'm done with this piece. I'm not touching it again. I've destroyed it in my mind and pushed it to the side.
Yeah, and that's part of the process I get as well. I can relate to that in the sense that I want to get the result too quickly sometimes. Like I'll sort of rush to finish something before I've actually taken the time needed to actually do things properly. You know, like just actually taking the steps that you're supposed to take to get somewhere, whether it's leaving something for 24 hours and coming back to it, or whether it's measuring twice before you cut. And I mean that generally, like checking things before you action anything that can't be amended. And that's I don't know. I mean, is that just passion for the thing you're doing, or is that just the laziness thing again? You know, like how much do you have to change the way that you are in how you naturally act in creating something to be able to do it properly? You know, is it like a repetition thing? Where does it sort of start to become routine and easy and making things perfect every time?
Yeah, it's definitely...
And what is perfect?
Yeah, exactly. Like I kind of find there's a beauty in things that are kind of half-assed.
Yeah.
Like there can be something amazing in it, but it's something that isn't necessarily fully finished.
For sure. And I guess you could call that originality too.
It can be considered.
It depends
that.
on how conscious you are of those little things. Like if you're making something and something's not quite done, but you didn't take much notice of it, it could sort of tie into an obscure original theme or something, rather than looking at something that's so crisp. I don't know. I think there's a difference in that as well. Something that's a bit more abstract. It's hard to sort of explain that because I know what I'm thinking of, but I'm trying to speak generally as well.
Yeah, it's the difference between intention and result. That's what really is that driving force.
Yeah.
It's like you can intend to do something, explain how you're intending to do it. If it doesn't come out that way, then other people can write that off.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's what's happened to me in the past as well. Like people have gone like, this isn't what you've intended. This is not what you have delivered. And I completely understand that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a weird thing to accept, and it can be part of what makes the process so much more strenuous as well, because you're constantly, once you start to realize what you do in the creative process, it can start to weigh on you a bit more, and you can either learn from that and fix those mistakes as you go on, or it can end up being like, why is this not, or you lose interest because I've made that mistake again, so why do I bother? Because I've been on both ends of that spectrum of being like, I'm not going to do this anymore because I can't get it right, or I go, okay, well, it was just a minor mistake. Let's do it again because I can use my time more efficiently because I know what needs to go into that as well. I think the best way for anyone to learn or to figure out the way to do something, and this is not an original idea of mine or anything, I think this is common knowledge, is just to learn from your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
It's just to come back and be like, hey, well, why didn't that work? And that will, I think, in turn, prove your passion for something as well. Like if you want to complete something enough that you're willing to go back to it or go back to the start again, then I think that shows that you're going to be that passionate about whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, and I've made a lot of dumb decisions, and I've learned from a lot of them. Like I still call myself a dumbass.
Yeah.
Like I can spout a bunch of things, but like that's because I've just obsessed over them.
Yeah.
And like I've got a minute understanding of ideas.
Yeah, I think there's an aspect to that is sort of humbling in a way. Like it's one thing to really beat yourself up, but there's another thing to go like, you silly goose. Just sort of say to yourself, oh, like it's a minor error. Like you realize that in yourself. You're not just sort of swamped by, trying to be something else or divert from having people feel a certain way about you.
Yeah, and like I always like, one of the ideas I always like explain is like why Joe Rogan's so successful is he's this idiot savant. Like he is dumb for all the right reasons, always trying to ask another question. He is like not, and he has knowledge, but it like his lack of knowledge or knowledge that he has and has accumulated puts him in this trajectory where it's like it has them explain things or like go into the minutia or like dissect his reasonings and stuff.
Yeah.
And it creates that dialogue. And that's how like a lot of people act. And it's like you can consider like Louis Theroux's interviewing, like he asks the dumb questions just to get them out there. Like when he's interviewed the Westboro Baptist Church, he knows that they hate gays. And he's just going to ask him, it's like, so why is it?
Yeah.
And to have them like definitely go into that and put it into context.
Yeah. That's crazy. Do you listen to much of Joe Rogan?
No, not really.
I
love and hate him. Probably the one I last listened to was the Kanye podcast because of course it's Kanye on there. And especially for him, like you can look at Kanye, it's just like he thinks so fast and especially with his BPD can send him into these manic episodes and stuff. And I think giving him a long form area of being able to express his ideas rather than putting him into these, because a lot of time when we've seen these outbursts is when we have put him into this box of time limit where he has to get all his ideas out and quickly like in one go.
Yeah.
When he's got this whole lapse of time for like 3 hours being able to go back and forth, like it might not be cohesive, but you can get an understanding.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's definitely his brain's ahead of his speech, and his ideas are so gargantuan that he can't actually sort of narrow it down sometimes. Like I really struggle to listen to that podcast because you can't get like a straight answer out of him. And like Joe let him speak for the most part, which is good, but there was still points where Joe had to ask him the same question 4 or 5 times over because he wouldn't really answer it, and it makes it quite hard to listen to. But you're right, like given the long form platform for Kanye to talk, you do get a lot more insight and understanding, which is cool. And I think that's why there's one of the big reasons is why podcasting and long form media is becoming more popular, is because you get a way deeper insight into people and what they're actually about and how they talk. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't get through most of that Kanye one just for that sole reason.
Well, like there was
what I'm actually listening to.
The best example I can pick out from the interview, which I really took away from, was his views on abortion. I don't agree with them, but it's like when you compare it to when he was doing his first rally in I forget where it was just like this Kanye hates abortion, like he's anti freedom of choice and stuff like that. Was all this yada yada yada, and it's like that completely like made me dismiss him. And it's like, well, I've also got like this weird bias where it's like I separate the art from the artist as well. And so I do not agree with his take, but I understand his take a lot more coming from Joe Rogan when he was able to explain himself and why he views it, where it's these ideas of race and control of population by having this Plan B pill or these things in these populations where they're trying to control the population, the a la crack epidemic and whatnot and AIDS. Yeah.
So was he saying it was like a I hadn't heard that bit. So was he talking about it being different in cultures or countries where there were more?
Well, like
more
especially
population?
in the U.S., like in ghettos and stuff, like him assuming like it's more prevalent there because they're the ones that are getting pregnant more often and stuff due to the class division and stuff, and of course, just little aspects like that. Like I'm not going to be the best. I'm just paraphrasing a lot of this, but like those kind of ideas is what he was getting forward, like trying to explain.
Yeah, interesting.
And it's like, it makes a lot more sense. Do I still agree with what he's saying? No, but it explains it a lot more where I can actually understand his point of view.
I guess that's what you kind of want from anyone with an opinion, right? Is to be able to justify something. And
like having that, and it's like, that makes a lot more sense with than just his manic raving due to his mind moving at such a fast pace in such a little time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like we now have the context with his, when he was doing his first rally, we did not have that context, and that was the issue.
Yeah, and it's scary to think that there has been so many people in the position that he is, and people that are in presidential campaigns that are not given 3 hours to talk about why they think the way they think they do. It's all just like media interviews where it's just short questions, short answers, pressure. What do you think, this and that?
Yeah.
And it's flipped and turned and made into something else that wasn't exactly true.
Yeah.
So it's privileged in that way that he was able to talk about it like that. You know, whether what no matter what your opinion is on something, to be given that long to talk about something is pretty rare.
But on the other side, to be a public figure like that, you need to be able to concisely make these talking points, make these decisions because you might have only a tiny bit of time. You cannot really make a rash decision in like that tiny bit of time. You have to really calculate things. Like if, say, back in like 2016, before like this whole North Korea, US handshake moment, like fingers were on the button, like getting like the keys were not in the ignition, but like they were like, oh, if this happens, do we pull the trigger? Like those kind of ideas. Like you cannot be extremely rash. You need to be balanced. You have to like look at everything. It's like, oh, how much damage is going to occur? Do we have to do this? Who are the allies? Who are the enemies in this situation? And like you have to break that down to an objective point of view.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like you cannot be in a moment of manic power where it's like in panic. Like you cannot just go like, oh no, something's happening. Like only option is pulling the big trigger rather than going, okay, do we have other options?
Yeah, for sure. The problem is people don't want to hear otherwise, right?
No.
Like people don't want to hear the other side to the argument. They just know what they know and they believe it for whatever reason they believe in, but they're not open to listening to someone else talk about it. And again, that's sort of generally speaking, but that's what I find like. And I'll admit, like, I'd be a hypocrite if I say, like, I'm not like that, because there's definitely ways in which I feel about things, and definitely, you know, definitely have opinions and reasons why I think the things I think, whether it's politically or ethically or in whatever context. But I'm still, you know, if someone had some logistical, like, whether I agree or disagree with what they believe from the start or how they explain it, I'm still open to listening to someone about why they think the way that they think it, rather than just shunning that person. You know, like, oh, you don't agree with me, well, I don't want to be associated with you. Granted, that may be what the result ends up being, depending on what the person's reasoning are. And some people just aren't willing to listen to reason. But if you can at least just try and get someone's reasoning for why they believe what they believe, and then be able to have that discussion or dispute what it is that they're saying is vital, really. And that is obviously majorly important in politics as well, in any capacity, is to be able to say, well, why is it that you believe this, rather than having, like, I don't like those televised debates where they have the two leaders biting each other's necks about this and that. It's like, that's just a TV show. Like, we don't need to see that. Like, you guys just need to seriously hash out what it is you believe, and I don't know what the solution is, but like, it's just like, why do I need to watch this? This is crazy.
Well, like, US politics have become a commodification for us.
Yeah.
Like, us watching from the outside world, we can now laugh at it. But also going back, we have the right of human nature to be dismissive. We are allowed to choose to dismiss things. Should you always? No, but you do have the right to dismiss ideas. And I believe that, like, I've started becoming more dismissive, especially watching the US politics, where it's like, especially Republicans, they are going against what their main goal is, which is helping their population. Do I have a different idea of what helping their population is? Yes, completely. I believe in social democracy, which is pretty much what a lot of the European nations like Finland, Sweden, all those kind of places are like. And it's like the perfect balance between socialism, communism, and capitalism, where it's like you're not having the full state be in control. You still have privatization, but you have these social safety nets. And like, you see like all these people like blocking people getting funding, like getting their stimulus checks. Like, just give the people their money. These are people that might get evicted and die. Like, you are hurting your population more than you're helping it by telling them to work harder. Like, yes, you can always work harder, but not always are you going to be the person that gets that job.
Yeah.
And that might be due to race. That might be due to disability. That might be due to mental health. Like, those are a lot of aspects like that politicians fail to recognize, where it's like, these are ideas like you need to help, especially during a time of COVID. We're lucky enough we can go back to work. These people cannot. A lot of these people are stuck at home. They lost their jobs. They can't pay rent. They can't buy food. What are they going to do instead?
Oh, it's crazy, man.
It's horrible. And that's
a lot of people here, I think, have got so complacent with the fact that we pretty much are back to normal lifestyle, you know, because I still find it crazy when I see posts on Instagram of whether it's people I follow or just posts that are being shared about, you know, like, this is how I'm feeling a year of lockdown. No, it's not after lockdown. I'm going, oh God, like, they're still in what's supposed to be a lockdown. Like, how does that even work after that long? It's crazy.
I was talking to people earlier this morning in Vancouver over Zoom for class, and it's like you see them wearing masks, and it's like, we're all sitting together in one room here in Dunedin, and it's just like
weird.
And like, I've got family friends, and it's like they can't. My one of my oldest friends, like, he's separated from his mom because they're in a lockdown. He's with his partner and her grandmother and stuff, who is susceptible to having something horrible happen to her due to her poor health, and stuff like that. So he can only really call his mom and stuff like that. And like, she's also working in a hospital, and you have all these other different problems surrounding that. So it's like, yeah, it's extremely difficult and hard for people right now. And it's like, just even thinking, my grandmother in Winnipeg, she's 91, still driving in the bitter cold winters of like, they get to -40.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. She's probably going to outlive me at some point, like, at this rate.
Yeah. Fuck. That's crazy, man. So unfortunate.
Yeah. But it's like, you just think of those things as like, some people, like, this can develop agoraphobia in people. And like, it has developed agoraphobia in a lot of people, whereas they're scared to go outside because they don't want to risk having someone they love pass or get sick and have unfixable health problems. Yeah.
Scary times, man.
It is. Well, not necessarily for us, but we still have to be on edge at points. Like, we've gone back and forth. Like, there was the one guy who was related to the Papatoetoe cluster who just went to uni, went to BK, went to the gym, and it's like, started crying they got bullied on Facebook. Like, you should know you fucked up this bad, that you could have risked so many people, their jobs, their family, their lives. Like, thinking of gigs, like, so many people's gigs got canceled. Like, Marlon Williams, he had 3 days booked here in the South Island, one of them in Oamaru, two of them down here. He had to postpone them. Like, think about how much money that would have cost him.
And for a musician, most of your income is coming from your live shows.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Like, that cost him supporting his band, his community, possibly. Like, I'm not too sure. Like, he lives a very modest lifestyle, Marlon, but like, to make his next piece of art and things like that.
Yeah,
like, like, those little actions have huge consequences.
Yeah, definitely. Oh boy, look, man, this was really fun. I really appreciate you coming on.
No problem.
This is honestly probably one of the most thorough, enjoyable conversations that I've had. So appreciate your time.
No problem.
Anything else coming up that you want to plug? You just
Not
doing
really.
your thing?
I'm just doing. Check out Radio 1, really, like Mondays 4-7 on Drive, and then the DPAG breakfast. Talking to artists and like discussing art and stuff. Like, I checked out a cool exhibit. You can listen to the podcast on Radio 1 under the programs and stuff.
Perfect.
Like, yeah, support your local, really. Like, go to your local shop still, man.
Yeah.
Like, I try and buy as much local products or like things that are eco-friendly as possible.
Yep, absolutely.
All those kind of things.
Like that. Sweet, man. Well, if there's anything you want me to put a link to, let me know and we'll suss it out, put it in the bio and all that shit, get it sorted.
Awesome.
Cool, man. Thanks, Paul.
No
Cheers.
problem.
Bye, everyone.
Catch it.
Home audio entertainment.
9016 Radio.
The show for artists of all kinds.
Sit down and relax. Enjoy the music.